thank you everyone to begin with on this rainy afternoon. Thank you first of all of you for accepting our invitation for this online conference. That's our initiation that we have begun, that nothing, even pandemic, cannot stop us from doing what we are always doing. So this is a 2-day national online conference on challenges and changing roles of placement officers post COVID-19 across these schools. The theme here actually is for these schools and the placements, but at our university we have a specialized program on family business, and we're also in the verge of opening a family business center here where we do a lot of research, consultancy, connecting, networking on that arena. And therefore we thought that let us also have this vantage point of understanding that how family businesses also look at hiring professionals, what are their challenges now post-pandemic, and how are they looking at moving ahead with their recruitment procedures. Before we begin on these lines, I would like to kind of regret on that our session chair, Dr. Sudhir Kumar Jain, who's a professor with JNU and former Vice Chancellor of Mata Vaishno Devi University, due to some unavoidable reasons could not be there. But although he has committed that if possible he will join at the later part, but I'm very thankful to one of our most senior faculty, Associate Professor Mr. Gaurav Ashish, who could make it. I would request my colleague and my coordinator along with me, Dr. C.V. Ramana sir, to please introduce our session chair, and after that I would take back to introduce our panelists, both two panelists for this session. Ramana sir, over to you.
Thank you, Tanu ma'am. Mr. Gaurav Ashish is an associate professor in School of Business, Aaroi University. He is an MA in French from Delhi University. He is a rank holder. He is an MBA from Berlin Institute of Technology. He is Jean Monnet Fellow from École Polytechnique, France. He has extensively traveled abroad in various countries, and he has worked with GEC Alstom in Europe. And apart from teaching, he is very much interested in research, training and consulting. And his areas of interest are design thinking, entrepreneurship, strategy and communication.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Tanu ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay.
These are the things we have not got accustomed till, I would say.
It's all right.
Yeah. Thank you, Gaurav sir, for accepting this invitation at such a short notice. But I think you are one person in our university we can always thank for.
Of course, yes. Pleasure and privilege.
Thank you, sir. So I would like to take this opportunity now to introduce our panelists. First, I would like to begin with Dr. Meeta Dixit, Family Business Advisor and co-founder at Equations Advisors Private Limited, Mumbai. Dr. Meeta Dixit is a co-founder and director of Equations, a family business advisory company. She plays several roles: a leader, advisor, faculty, researcher, and a mentor. Meeta ma'am has 24 years of experience in family business consulting, business strategies, and organization development. She comes from a family business background and therefore understands the dynamics of family, business, and ownership very well. She has also worked with large companies like Piramal Group, Indian Express, Garvey Group, and in many senior positions. She has also authored a very renowned, famous, and most referred book on family business titled as The 5 Gs of Family Business. We're also very lucky to have her last year as our keynote speaker for the orientation program of our 2019 batch, and it was a wonderful experience. And since then, she has been always in touch, and I've been following her work, which is really commendable. Thank you, Meeta ma'am, for being there for us today.
Pleasure, my pleasure, Tanu.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. So next, yes, we have the next gen here from the family business, a young entrepreneur, Mr. Nitesh Kothari. He's the Deputy Managing Director at Kothari Products Limited, Panparag. Nitish Kothari represents the new generation in the management and board of directors at Kothari Products Limited. He is MBA from UK, and just after completing his management studies, he joined the group. He is successfully executing the responsibilities, and under his able leadership, the group is poised to attain newer heights. Besides numerous accolades, he is also the recipient of Best Citizens of Indian Award 2009, conferred on him by the International Publishing House, New Delhi. Sir, we welcome you on this conference today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
I would now request Gaurav sir to please set the stage for this session, which is primarily on family business and entrepreneurship, viewing at how they would move ahead in this pandemic and post-COVID scenario. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome once again on behalf of the School of Business and Oro University. It's really been a proud privilege to have people, resource persons, those who have had experience, exposure, and not just the domain, but also insofar as training and consulting, and also practicing in the domain of family business is concerned. From whatever little I could gather from the introduction, and modest as you both appear, Dr. Meeta and Mr. Mitesh, for the accomplishments, I think our deliberations today, and insofar as setting the tone for the deliberations, I would like to invite you into the domain of, in particular, as to what do we think. Three things. Number one, and let us be hopeful and optimists, so set the tone right. In the post-COVID world, how do we think that family businesses should prepare themselves or start preparing themselves? So that, I think, should be the first point of deliberation that I would like to propose to set the tone right. Secondly, insofar as the challenges and opportunities have presented themselves in the couple of months, or more than a couple of months. So we have had first the lockdown and then the unlock 1.0 to 3.0 and beyond. What specific problems and opportunities have presented themselves to family businesses, and let us say to begin with in Surat, Gujarat in particular, and then I would say not just nationally but internationally. That I think I would like to propose as the second agenda point for deliberations. And the last but not the least, as to who do we think are more important insofar as family business concerns, including startups. If we look at, let us say, a successful family business and the next generation, which is also perceived as the scion of the existing family business, do we need to promote the successor of family business enterprise to take the existing enterprise to newer heights? Or in these changed times and changing times, do we need to promote as an established family business that the successor to this family businesses should take up new startups? Tanu ma'am, please, would you like to add on something?
Yeah, definitely. And I like to invite anyone who would want to begin first, maybe Meeta ma'am or Mitesh sir on both the all the areas. And I think family business prominently, why? Because about 70 to 80% or even more of GDP of the Indian economy actually is driven and contributed by Indian family businesses. And when sir has mentioned particularly cities like Surat were dominated with small enterprises and they're all dominantly family businesses, what are your advice that they should move ahead in this time? So I invite and extend this invitation. Okay, let's have ladies first. So Meeta ma'am, can you begin with this, please?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Gauravji, you have asked 3 questions, and which are, if you have to really answer, then it is equivalent to your 6 lectures for students, because these are very deep, apt questions you have asked, and with very limited time that we have, Mitesh ji and I'll be sharing this time, so naturally we'll be talking about these topics. But let me very briefly talk about each point, or maybe one or two points, and then Mitesh ji can also give his views and opinion, and then we can have a dialogue or so. The important part, when you say that how should family businesses prepare, the first issue is that it's given this very, very sudden, unforeseen scenario that has happened, and all of us, the whole world is going through this scenario. So how should family businesses prepare, or were they ever prepared for this challenges, and what will be the next when this challenge mitigates or slows down or comes in control? Let me give you a little bit background of family businesses. The oldest family business, which I'll not go into details, but I would say that they are oldest family business in the world is 1500 years old, almost 1400 and some odd numbers. Okay, and there are now businesses in India which are 150 years old and 100 plus years old. There are n number of businesses. I would say at least there would be about 200, 300 businesses in India itself. I don't know, Mitesh ji, are you a second generation or third generation?
Third,
so
ma'am.
You're third. So your business also is 50, 60 years plus.
Yes.
So businesses, family businesses have survived. They have survived world wars. They have survived tsunamis. They have survived n number of challenges that economy or the world or the environment has presented, and they have also survived challenges of their own families. Family issues, family dynamics plays a very important part, and families have survived and they have come up. So I'm sure that this pandemic definitely is a turning point, but family businesses are going to survive. And the reason is, there are two reasons I would say. The two characteristics of families which are in business, owner families. Number one is entrepreneurial DNA. If there is no entrepreneurial DNA, if there is no way of looking at things in a different way or taking charge of the situation, whatever the situation demands, if that risk-taking ability and entrepreneurship is not there in the family, then the family would not survive even first generation. So I would say, even Mitesh ji also will agree with me, that risk-taking ability and the risk, not being risk-averse is something which is there in the families who survive and sustain. And I'm sure that the families will also, in India and otherwise other places also, they will come up this challenge. Second part is the families are very flexible. They are agile. And as the changes is in surroundings, whether it is customers' requirements or likes or dislikes of customers or environment or competition, they're quick to decide what do we want to do next. So I'm coming across several examples now with our clients also when we discuss, and we find that they are very fast in thinking and saying, if, for example, manufacturing capacity, you have got a large plant and the plant is making something, pharmaceuticals, then they could also start making some other accessories which are really required now for our COVID-19. So some businesses have started, some families have started entering this new area of disinfectants and manufacturing machines for disinfectants, and very quick, very fast in last 3 months or 4 months. So coming to the question, how the families are going to, or whether the families are surviving or not, I think most families will survive business, this challenge, and they will move on. A few families, if they have not taken, or they are not open enough to change with the times, then they may find problems. Even if they find that business is not at all happening at this stage, but in another 3 years, 4 months, 3 months, 4 months, or even a year or so, they'll be able to come back. Very few families, I think, will get out of the business completely. So well, this is my perspective on family businesses. They are going to survive, they're going to sustain, but they will have to make a lot of changes in their own thinking, in their processes, in their strategies to continue to survive. That's there. Miteshji, would you like to express your views on
Yes,
this?
ma'am. I would just like to add on to this, ma'am. Thank you so much for having me, first of all. See, I'm the third generation, like I mentioned earlier, and we are a 47-year-old company. My grandfather, my father, now I'm looking after it. Of course, with my grandfather is no more, but my father is with me. What happens in today's family business sometimes, and luckily or unluckily, however you want to put it, we are a very nuclear family. It is not that we have got extended family. There's no cha-cha, there is no tao. It is just my father, my grandfather, myself, and I just have a sister. So if you take a decision, be it right, be it wrong, it is your decision. In family businesses, sometimes what happens is that I have to ask someone else, or I have to take approval from X person or Y person, and that creates a conflict in the family sometimes, because everyone has their own views. Like any MNCs, has a hierarchy, and family businesses have, and I will not say ego, but difference of opinion. So and that difference of opinion doesn't finish in the office. It goes all the way back home also if you're a larger family. So you have to put that aside, especially in these post-COVID times, because now what happens is, if we start thinking of how we used to do business, even me, before like a year back, and now if I have to think, now can I do business like this? It is not possible. Like 50% of my habits have changed. People have started working from home, and startups are a new thing. We have to digitalize to sustain in the market or to compete. I'm not saying I'm competing with MNC, but in my field, if we have to compete with one another, you can get a technical or a marketing edge over another person if you are more digital savvy now. It is not only that at point of purchase, that if you advertise your products, or if you put your salesman in the market, or retailing, if you do that, that is the right mantra. Now there are many ways after post-COVID. Okay, what is the new thing? How can you place your product here? How can you put an ad here? How can you make your product visible here? And this all going to be digital. Since the last, like you said, ma'am, many businesses have come out with the sanitizers and masks and this and that. Even we have come out with one, So and we came out with it in the last, I think, as soon as the lockdown 1 happened. Before lockdown 2 and 1, it was there in the market. So you have to act very, very quickly, and that happens sometimes because all the decisions are with 1 or 2 people in a family business. So sometimes it gives you an edge. Sometimes it can be negative for you, depending how you want to put it. Regarding opportunities post-COVID, I think there would be ample. It is just a bad phase right now. There are a lot of companies who are not performing that well. Maybe they get some funding, maybe not. But then if some entrepreneur gets into them, or family business wants to get into some core sector which they want to get into, there would be ample opportunities, because many companies would be there in NCLT or other places where they could encash on the opportunity and their timing. And regarding this startups, like earlier there was a thing like, if the king's son is there, the prince will become the king. I really don't believe in this attitude. I would give preference to this attitude because it gives me an advantage. But otherwise, if tomorrow there is a new CFO who is better performing than me, or equally performing than me, or someone who's giving better ideas, or whose wavelengths match, because I also have one son, and we've got, apart from Pan Parag or tobacco business, we are diversified into hotel business, the sanitizers, we are into real estate, we are into education. So what happens is that there's so many places like education where I hardly interfere. It is totally run by professionals, though it is it's a family business, but we have delegated it to professionalism totally. We just look after the finance and the admin part of it. Admin also a little bit, but we don't interfere much. So in today's time, there are some businesses where you have to be present yourself, and some businesses you should delegate and give the change to someone else who can take it ahead to a new level, because maybe you don't have time for it, or maybe you don't have much knowledge for it. Everyone cannot learn everything, right? So someone, and if they have interest in that business, they can delegate it to someone else to run it for them, as long as it's managed well.
Mitesh, thank you so much. And this is bringing us to a very interesting topic where I would like both our panelists and our session chairs' contribution in it. But first of all, I'd like to congratulate you, Mitesh. It's very well mentioned in Meeta ma'am's book also that it's only 13% of the family businesses which make to the third generation. But yeah, you are from that percentage.
Yes,
and yes, you very rightly said that you don't belong from a multi-family business. So therefore, it's just a father-son transition that is happening.
right.
But I have a question here, and this question is actually for both Meeta ma'am, Mitesh sir, and obviously I would request Gaurav sir also to extend his remarks on that. So there is this one tendency. It's very nice, Mitesh sir, that you have said, because of the scope of your business, that at a certain point the business reaches a point where you need entrepreneurial talent beyond family. So you will have to have professionals in the business. But and there's always a question whether to buy the horse first or buy the cart first, right? So, so there is so because in our family business program, the biggest challenge that our students over the next generation have with professionalizing the business. Why I'm really focusing on professionalizing the business, also talking about placement. So. Having somebody coming out from outside the family, the biggest problem and challenge that is observed generally is that all family business owners, particularly the founders, are major control freaks.
Yes.
And it's very difficult for them to delegate. In fact, we all know about these cases that it's very difficult for the founders or the earlier generation to let the next generation take the reins in their hand. That transition is also pretty difficult because, if they're emotionally connected with their business, and then they just can't delegate. And the biggest problem in our family business today is, like what you mentioned about delegation, is delegation does not mean educating, basically. But so how do you see, I would like Mitesh sir to comment on this, and then Meeta ma'am also, that what are your suggestions that which is the first thing to do, and how to move towards professionalizing your business and having entrepreneurial talent coming in the business outside the family?
See, I'll talk from my experience, ma'am. What happens was, when I joined my business, I did my MBA, and as soon as I came, I was, put in the grind. So when my granddad was there, and he said, "Okay, Mitesh, you will not have a cabin. You will not sit alone. You will sit with all the staff. You'll have food with all the staff, and you will not sit in an AC room. You will only go when you are in the town. You will only go to the factory. They're also on the production floor. Understand how a machine works. Understand how the raw material is, understand how it is brought, from where we buy it, is it the right rate or not." And he gave me one particular state in all of India that you have to go 15 days over here every month, and 15 days you have to be in the production. For fun, whole year, I used to do that. So once you grill a child who knows that he is going to succeed this business, or who's going to get this business, he puts an extra effort to it, firstly.
Yeah, true.
So, and when they know that this is all going to come back to me, and if I don't perform now, then things can go otherwise also. It can delay the transition, it can go otherwise also. There are many things. And after all, it is all coming back to you. If you have that sense in mind, then you will, of course, perform better. And if you perform better, then it is easier for the elder generation to delegate things to you, because then they have seen how much pressure can you take, how much heat can you take, how much trauma can you take, how much office time you can take, how much recreation time you can take. So they are judging you all the time, and it is right for them, because they need the company whom they have brought it up with their sweat, not to just go waste. When I'll be given a chance, probably I will also take a similar route, maybe not that tough now because the generation is changed, but in a similar kind of a way. And then there comes a point when they realize, okay, now he's at par, now he can take work. Then they start giving you slowly. For example, they start giving you advertisement department, then they start giving you purchase department, then they start giving you logistics. They don't give you everything at once. Then when they get to see, okay, fine, you're performing. Then over time, even to be very frank, even I'm not fully in control right now. Of course, I'm the third generation. My father is here, and I still have to report to him on a very professional basis, and he takes things still quite professionally. So there's still things which I need to seek permission from him from. So that's the way it is.
Yeah, nice. Nita ma'am, this is extended to you now.
Yes, Mitesh, you said very well. This is you're still your third generation. You're the only successor, and still you have to listen to the seniors first and do things. I think in younger generation, and especially now in post-COVID, if we take the new normal, then younger generation's responsibilities are going to increase a lot. In fact, they have increased also, because I was saying, talking to some client also, and the younger generation guy said that my father and me, we always had disputes, but last 4 months he has not gone to the factory at all. He's a senior citizen, and I'm handling this entire factory work, and his faith in me has increased like anything, which was not there earlier. Earlier he used to always check and ask me whether I've done correctly, or no, he would keep on nagging me, but now he listens to me. So I think it is irrespective of COVID being there or not, there are two things. It's a two-way highway between two generations which has to be maintained, and that highway is of trust and respect. Now, younger generation has to earn the trust. It is not that the trust comes by just getting a MBA degree. You have to show to your action and performance that yes, you are trustworthy. That means you are following the norms which are set by your seniors, by your organization, the rules that you follow by going to the office, coming back, or your activities that you have to do, rather than just taking your role as an entitlement. So, I'm the son of the owner or daughter of the owner. That sense is something which has got no place now in the organizations if the family businesses have to perform. And another is respect. I look at it many times, the senior generation members, that is father or uncle, they don't respect younger generation. They just take them for granted and say, "Aise hi hota hai. What do you know? You don't have experience, so you got to do this." But trust the younger one and respect the younger ones for their ideas, even if the ideas are not practical, but allow them to share, allow them to express. And that is where the younger generation and senior generations communication becomes very important. So it is unlike the communication between the boss and the subordinate. It is a communication between the father and the son, or the uncle and the nephew. And also it is a communication between the owner and not the owner yet, but going to be an owner. The younger generation is going to be, but still not the owner. And so it's a family relationship, it's your business relationship, and there comes your working relationship. He's the boss and you are reporting to the boss. So of course it is this dynamics. Mitesh, you are very fortunate that you don't have cousins and siblings, and I know what you call this, cousins consortium in the business. Yeah, so it is a much easier or simpler way. But where there is a cousin consortium, the younger generation has it. Now, what is good for younger generation now, in next generation, especially after this post-COVID, all the businesses, irrespective of their in service, manufacturing, whatever they are doing, they will have to digitalize. They will, if they are not, then they will have to. Otherwise, we are like communicating now, sitting far away, different places, but still we are here. And that is how the businesses are going to run. So technology is something which is going to be a must, number one. Yeah. Number two, I think the families now, having gone through this difficult time, it happens that in families you start, because of difficult time, because of the pressure outside, external pressure being so much, families may have more conflict and more arguments and more disagreements in difficult times. And there is also another side of it, that in difficult times we all come together and say, now we are going to fight this together, situation, this scenario. So for larger families, or say multiple members, multiple age group being there, it is very important now for the families to sit together and decide that what is going to be their new way of doing business next 2 years, next 3 years. What are the areas that they need to focus on? Sales are not there, or customers are not there, you need to go and bring them back, or resource raw material is an issue, markets are issue, government regulations would be issues. What are we really wanting to focus on, and how our family is going to who's going to take what role and what responsibilities in the business. It is a time now for families to decide, and we call it as simply family governance. So it's like parliament. So you know that there are corporators, starting with corporators and go up, and MLAs, and then you go up Lok Sabha and then be the speaker or the prime minister. So there's a whole entire hierarchy, and families will have to also think about and work on this hierarchy. And that is where I'm seeing that a lot of senior generation members are now becoming conscious about their letting go. You just let go your role or your authority and allow younger generation to take the charge. That has started happening. That is, I see the change in family businesses now.
Yes, we do see the change. Gaurav sir, as a session chair, your remarks on this, and then I think I have another topic to indulge into.
Okay, very quick sharing of thoughts, and just two of them. Number one, and borrowing heavily from Mr. Mitesh and Dr. Meeta, modesty would be the key to success. We have to be always in the learning mode. And if we really want to learn it well, we have to also start the modest way. So when Mr. Mitesh was sharing with us as to how he took up the reins and how he was acculturated into the system. So the acculturation into the family has to be done, initiation has to be done, so that you start from the scratch, as if you are building it from the scratch. Process. The second thing comes very organically, comes very naturally, and that is, if we have adopted the, and by would I would mean the new generation, the Gen X and the Gen in the family business, then in that case, the better seasoning of the wood would also mean that the exposure is there. I would borrow Dr. Meeta's words when she said that we have got to learn how to earn the trust and respect. That, I think, is the process of seasoning. And once the seasoning of this wood is done, the new generation in the family businesses would then certainly be able to craft out masterpieces. So three things to sum up and then hand it over back to Tanu ma'am. Number one, patient, learn the rules of the game, and don't feel overwhelmed by created sense of overindulgence and overimportance, because modesty lost would be everything lost if you really want to take your family business to the next level. Over to Tanu ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, now my next question is that how in India particularly we see that the identity of the family and the businesses are pretty much co-joined. So however your business is doing, that's how it becomes your social identity for the family. So this is how it is very different from the Western approach, where the business and families are kind of kept separate. But in India, they are an overlapping concept. So we are also sometimes known by the brand name of our business. So it's Mitesh, I would know you more better as a Panparag family rather than a Kothari family, So that's the thing. Now, in this scenario, I want to bring back to you that how does a hybrid mechanism work? Now, when I say hybrid mechanism, I want to say, that as you're already in your third generation and very soon you will your son will be joining the business, and not necessarily that generation to generation we will be able to bring best of the entrepreneurs. I'm sure you're very different than your grandfather and also your father, and so will be with your son. And that's where there is a need of professionals coming in. As if you mentioned, experts, your CFO, so financial officers, maybe somebody from the marketing or manufacturing experts. And that's where you also have to kind of give away, delegate. You have done that, Mitesh sir. And ma'am, you have dealt with a lot of families who have been in the process of professionalizing their business. So here I want to shift and ask you, and I have also seen that becomes very difficult. They don't know where to begin, how to delegate. As I said earlier, their major controls leak and delegation is a big problem. So how does that hybrid mechanism or professionalizing the family business work? Because we clearly understand, we are really not talking on this, that this is the need. This has to be done now. But how is the question?
Ma'am, you want to go first or should I?
Please, Mitesh. It's pleasure to listen to your real life experience.
See, first of all, the first thing that you asked was how you are sometimes business and the brand names gets associated with the person, right? Yeah. It gets merged with each other. What happens is most of the family businesses were from B towns. They were not from Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, or big metros of India. Most of these family businesses emerged somewhere in places like Kanpur, Raipur, Indore, all these Jaipur. These are not metro towns. So of course in these towns the population is less, and it is more or less you interact with those 100, 200, 300 families who are your friends, whom you study with, because they're limited schools. So your kids are going together, and your family. The town becomes like a family. Though at least 200-300 people whom you are with. Why I'm sharing is because I was in Kanpur from the time I was born until 2012. So I've seen that, and only until last 8 years I shifted to Bombay. So in the last 8 years, when I go to Bombay, of course people recognize the brand, but then they don't associate it. Some of my friends don't even know what I do. They just know me. They just know that I'm Mitesh, a friend of XYZ, and I'm into education business. That's about it. So some of them don't even want to get into that space because they're not that interfering, and they're so busy in a multinational firm, in a big city. Most of them are professionals. They don't care. They just want to have a relaxed, free time. So they don't indulge much. While in smaller towns, it's the other way around. So that is why things get merged in a smaller towns, maybe in Surat or in Kanpur. So that's what I've experienced, over here. And the second question regarding a hybrid model, we particularly have experienced this, that we like to delegate, or we want to delegate now more than ever, because we are short of hands. We are just two of us. My father is around 70. I'm turning around 45 soon. So what happens is now I don't want my son. I joined business when I was just 20, 21. I want him to join after 30. I want him to experience his education, want him to do his internship, want him to take, see what is happening around the world. Like you rightly said, I want him to get the right exposure, like what Meeta ma'am said. Yeah. He should be exposed not only to this particular line that we work in, he should be exposed to the world and beyond. Because if you see the Forbes list, maybe 20 years down the line, they were a total different companies who are not into digital as well. They weren't doing anything in digital. There was no Amazon, there was no other companies. But these companies have just come and they've just taken everything from a bank. So 20 years down the line, maybe genetics is the new digital. Who knows? Or pharma is the new digital. So we don't know. Things keep changing. So I just wanted to explore the world, take his time to jump into this business, because once he gets into it, it is like it's like a cyclone. You can't get out. So you be there, otherwise you don't be here. So once you're here, then things will start happening, and then things will start being delegated to him or otherwise. And in the meantime, because of the portals that we have willingly started some of the businesses where we have appointed a person, giving him the idea that now you start this business, we want to do it, but we will not interfere. So that is delegation from day one. So there's some businesses we do in that fashion as well.
Here I'd like to ask you a question before we move to Meeta ma'am. That what is the mindset that you keep, that you delegate an entire business to someone and this one particular line that we won't interfere? Now, how easy is that, or then how do you do that? What's the mindset that works?
Ma'am, what happens is,
checkpoints?
see, finance is one checkpoint, of course, and budgets, they have to start. Finance budgets have to come from day one. A lot of planning has to go before we start. Maybe 7 years down the line, what is the roadmap for that particular project 7 years down the line? So everything has to be decided now for 7 years. If everything goes smoothly, a lot of planning has to go, and the person whom you're delegating it to, his experience and his knowledge, his background makes a lot of difference. And of course, you have to keep checking it, because if someone has a power like or the authority like an owner has, then the checks have to be double.
Yes, true. As I said, that delegation does not mean abdicating.
No. The checks have to be double. So that's the way.
Yes. Meeta ma'am, your point of view on this.
Yes. So I have a perspective on professionalization of family businesses. Generally, families or say youngsters, when I talk to them and they interact and they say, oh, we want to hire some managers and they will do our job so that we'll be free from doing our day-to-day things and we'll be engaged in our other things. Now that other things, if you talk with the younger generation, then pardon me, but most of the time it is to be more on social media, to be more doing activities with their friends or their community people also, but not really working 8, 10 or 12 hours in the business. So I have this youngsters who are where I teach or interact with them. So this is where the whole idea of professionalization is, that we'll hire experts, we'll put them and they will do all the job and we'll have our benefit. So my question to them goes is that if you are going to hire people and they are going to do your job, are you also going to give them your equity holding to them? Are you also going to share profits the way you carry home? So will you also be giving them? So there is a big question, blank face, and say no. So the issue is that when we talk about professionalization, it is the family members first, they need to think and behave like professionals. It starts from the family and then from the top. Tone at the top, we call it. Tone at the top has to be professional. Then it goes down the organization, and then you hire people, and then they would have interest of staying with you. But you, as owners, if you are just playing the role of an owner and not being a manager yourself and work in a structured way like a manager you are expecting him or her to work, then your professionalization is just a I would say, I mean, it sounds crude, but I would say it is show off, and it's not really you're going to the foundation of professionalization. So this is what the message is for the younger generation.
Ma'am, I really recall once when you had come down to Oro University, and this was very interesting because you are known for your honesty. And in the orientation, very clearly you asked the students that if you belong from family business, how many of you get salaries? And yes, no, none. There was none. And it was like they're not even, it's at their convenience. If they want money, they just take it. And then here we talk about professionalizing business and delegating. So I think, you're very right. And I would like to have viewpoint from Gaurav sir, like what ma'am has said, or Nitesh has said, that exposure and yourself being professional is so much important. So what you're saying as an academician, what is the role of education that will help this next generation?
Okay. Good and very pertinent points on the thought-provoking question from Tanu ma'am. I think both as an academician and also as a corporate trainer in India and abroad, dabbling into, not exactly into family business, but into consulting assignments, I'm right now sort of conceiving a model, and maybe it will see the light of the day in post-COVID times, And the model is actually precisely in this domain of family business, and how do we actually get to prepare the passing on the baton act. Because that is also important, because Meeta ma'am also talked about what in psychology we talk of as sibling rivalry, and in a way in businesses we also talk of in-house, inbound competitions, and we also love to promote competition, because that I think is also the driver of success and for that matter motivation. So anyway, getting back to the I think I would very crisply and curtly like to put it in this way, is that I look at this entire, agree with me, in three phases. The first phase is when actually it begins as a startup. So in that case, the promoter has to have the primordially important role of two things, and I'm going to talk of verbs, because verbs, according to me, denote action. So first verb is how to engage. So engage everything and anything that you have. Engage yourself, engage the resources, engage your people, engage the processes, engage the systems, engage your customers. And the second verb or second action in the first phase itself is how to propel. So you have to have the wisdom, you have to have the vision, and as an amalgamation of all these things, you will learn to propel your business, which is just kind of as a startup, to become a successful family business. And just like to quote Tanu ma'am, that not many of them actually get to see the third generation onwards. So if we actually provide the family business in the first phase with a good the famous question, to be or not to be, whether the promoter is there or not, actually made himself or herself dispensable. So you can dispose the promoter off and say confidently that yes, now we are ready for the phase two. So what is the phase two that we are talking of? The phase two, I look at again two verbs and two actions, and that is for the promoter to disengage. Now this is also something which is very, very important, because unless and until we let go of the control, the next generation, the next passing on the baton, deserving kind of team members would not be able to learn and take the businesses to the next level. So to learn how to disengage, and then simultaneously in the phase two, the most important thing along with disengaging is like Tanu ma'am also said, I mean, we end up being control freak. I mean, even if we are not running a family business, even in academics, we end up doing helicopter mentoring. Don't do that. Learn how to empower. Believe in your team. And the last, but not the least important phase, according to me, is not to hang up the boots. For example, Mitesh ji ke agar grandfather hain, ya father hain, ya even a couple of decades later, I would recommend, and I see that happening, not that I'm in a position to write a prescription, but just a thinking aloud kind of an act. And that is in the phase three, the science, those who actually let the ball rolling in the phase one need not hang up their boots. They need to do again two more things. And the first verb here, which comes to my mind, I just I'm working on a model, and this one is about reinventing. So the fact that we invented something, the fact that we propelled something, the fact that we disengaged and empowered the next generation is a happy situation. So learn how to capitalize on that, and then reinvent on those things which actually make us say, well, the grass is not always greener on the other side, but how do you get to know unless and until you've been there? Later on, even in the evening phase of my life as a promoter of a family business, I could say, well, even as a grandpa or a granny, if I could reinvent, if I could re-prospect. Now that is also important. Do you have the courage? Do you have the grit and the grind-facing ability to re-prospect something and show to your third generation that, hey, you know what? It's not that. It's high time for me to say, grandpa or grandmother, you would better retire and sip your favorite cup of cappuccino. That, I think, done would complete the full circle, right from phase 1 to phase 2 and then finally to phase 3. Thank you. Tanmay.
Thank you. So yeah, we have a live case in form of Mitesh ji, but he comes from a father-son kind of a business. But here we have a lot of students, and I'm sure those students are also our participants now, who come from multi-family or close family friends business, right, ma'am? So I'm posing this question first to you, Meeta ma'am, and then of course all of them in the panels are open for their opinions. That recently we have realized that family governance becomes a very important instrument, and also in your opening talk you mentioned about it, because it becomes more like a code of conduct for everyone, especially when you move from the founders to the next and end up into a cousin consortium. So I want you to speak a little about it, tell that how this helps, and if you could give some Indian examples of how well people have practiced and how it has helped them to sustain the business over generations. I wish you could throw some light on that.
Sure, I would like to do that because it's my favorite topic. Day in and day night, I just work on that. And day before Supreme Court's judgment, verdict came about women, daughters who will get equal inheritance. So in coming coming years, months and years, family governance is going to become very important. And
very
challenging.
Important.
Yes, it is. So family businesses have got three pivots on which a family business stands, or say we call them as a T-circle model, like Gaurav would know about it, and we all call this as a family, business and ownership. These are the three circles, and these circles are continuously interacting and clashing with each other. But if we see practically, what happens is that in any family having the business, family members wear three hats. Those who are working in the business wear a hat of the manager. Those who are not working in the business, they wear the hat of the family, or they could be owners also. And several family members are also owners of the family. That means physically they have the shareholding, or say they have their investments and their share in the business. So family aspect, business aspect and ownership aspect, all three have got these three roles, have got different priorities. Now, I was just talking, and several such cases happen. So in the family, when we interact, when we communicate, and we take things for granted, and we have our conversations are not very formal. They are friendly. Sometimes we shout at somebody, and sometimes we are very lovingly, we take care. So largely the family has got the objective that the family members should be taken care of. They should be, their well-being is there at the heart of the family. So that caring part, when it extends in the business, and there it becomes that because I care for my nephew, or I care for my brother or my brother's daughter, and I will give her a job in the business irrespective of whether she's qualified or not, so that caring is extended in the business, which is really may or may not be apt. Because the daughter who is looking for a job, but she may not have the competencies of working in the business, and then just because she is from the family, if you are hiring, I'm giving this very simple yet most common example in family businesses. We hire our employees as family members who are competent or not competent, and many times they are not competent or not trained also to be competent. So That is where. And then the third part comes of the ownership. And there, whether to take loans or whether to go for outside fundraising, or whether to get publicly listed, or whether to remain privately controlled. These are the issues which are again clashing with the family's beliefs, values, their rituals which they believe in, and most important is that what do they think that their family stands for. Now, family governance is a complex mechanism, though important and necessary for the family, especially where there are multi-age and multi-generational members are there. Family constitution in case of Mitesh ji may not be really apt, because you may decide it, but still the hierarchy is very clear one-to-one. But remember that, see that if there are 2 or 3 youngsters who are ready to be successor and future managing directors, so how are you going to decide today that who's going to be your future managing director? So family governance is a mechanism which helps the family draw lines between what is a family's roles, responsibilities, values, what is a business or say enterprise we call, or say business and management roles, responsibilities, and the ownership part. So when you start drawing lines and putting them in separate buckets, what the family is, what is important for the family, what is required for the family, and what family believes in. Similarly, what is important for business, what is required for business, what the business believes in terms of business vision or business values. What do we stand for customers, or what do we stand for our stakeholders? So these beliefs of business, and then the beliefs and expectations as owners. When these 3 buckets are drawn up and they are clearly demarcated, then simply it becomes governance. It becomes a structure. It becomes a way of behaving, way of thinking and behaving as a family in the business. So family governance is today, it's like once upon a time business strategy was a subject which was very, very favorite of anybody and everybody. So family governance also has become a subject and a topic where it is discussed a lot. But I think family governance is required only in certain type and stages of the family, number one. And number two, it's complex because everybody has to align their thoughts and their beliefs and their aspirations with what they are thinking of future. So it is complex, but it is not impossible, but rather I would say it is very necessary or mandatory for families, multi-generational, multi-age family members, that they get into this governance mechanism. Well, mechanism is also we call family charter, family constitution, family board. These are all the ways that how the governance is depicted or say governance is practiced. But largely the governance is creating 3 buckets, having easy and open communication on all the 3 buckets, and having transparency in what we are going to do in these 3 buckets. This is what I call it as governance.
Okay, wonderful, ma'am. So I think I really liked one thing, and that perspective didn't really come hugely in my mind. What Mitishji has said is that the concept of identity of the family coming from business is usually in small towns, right? And I think that is where we are interacting with the students who come from this city, Surat, and that's how they are known. Sometimes, they give their introduction also in form of, ma'am, I come from this family or that family as a brand name, and I'd like to tell me your name, right? So that is one. And I think that the sense of entitlement, etc. also comes from that. Having said this, I just wanted to ask, out of your experiences and your interactions with various businesses, so here in Surat, we have this 3 major communities. That is, one is the Marwari community, which is dominating the textile business here, the Punjabi community also into the textile and manufacturing. Then we have this Gujarati, Kathiawadi, who are dominating the diamond business here. So we have textiles, diamonds usually here, and yes, there are real estate, which is a mix. And we see that there is this huge sense of what would you call cultural or value system coming from the community. If you're a Marwari, or if you're a Jain community, you would not make certain business decisions based on your community or your culture. So usually, for example, we won't find Jain going into any alcohol-related businesses such as hospitality or maybe restaurant business, food and beverage or something like that. So I just wanted to understand, Miteshji, from you, is there some kind of this unsaid rule because you come from a certain background, either your own experience or from your friend circles or your other networks? And same that I would extend this to Meeta ma'am. And what do you think that how much can this be sustained, or should it be sustained, or what is your viewpoint on that?
See, first let me clarify, I'm a Gujarati and I'm a Jain. I don't know if you know about it.
I always thought that you are a Marwadi family.
Even I felt so.
Yeah. So what happens is many people get confused because I'm a Kothari. I'm a Kat. In fact, I'm from a very small town, Naradi, next to Ahmedabad. My grandfather was from there. We are a Jain Gujarati, and we are into tobacco business, and we are into hospitality business. Hospitality means hotels, and hotels sell anything and everything. So that answers your question in one way, that particularly it is a very personal thing, what businesses you want to get into, where you see the opportunity you get into. And like my father or my grandfather used to say, Mitesh, don't get into alcohol business. Of course, I wanted to get into it, but they said, no, that is one segment we don't want to touch, because it is something which we don't want to do, or we don't want to get into hospitals. Let's put it that way. Not because no matter how good you are or how good a hospital is, someone will die. You can't save anyone and everyone. And what happens is, if someone passes away because of their misfortune or the hospital's unknowing misfortune, you get cursed. You get you get bad mouth, or you get in our language, what do you call badnami hoti hai. So unnecessarily, why to take these bad omens on you? So just try to stay away from these businesses. But there is no said rule as such. I think a lot of people, if they have the opportunity, they would jump into something. But they, like, as a community, I think Gujaratis, Marwadis and all, they prefer not to get into alcohol and stuff like that.
So because why I'm asking this question is because there are the next generation who feel that as a family startup is within the umbrella of the family. They want to start new ventures because they feel that the existing one is already there and their family is open. But so they feel this as a resistance to get into other sectors. And that's also where some kind of a conflict comes in. And there's also, they feel that we're losing on huge opportunity. So that is why I kind of posed this question. I think Meeta ma'am, you would like to.
Personally, if I push my father towards any business that I want, if I can convince him on paper and everything, of course he will agree. But if he has a myth in his mind, then there are other avenues as well. Why not pursue those rather than just get behind? Why to make someone unhappy? Let's put it that way.
I think that is the uniqueness of Indian family businesses prominently.
Yes.
Meeta ma'am.
I must add here, what Miteshji, you said, that your father would allow you to do, but why to make him unhappy? Now, this is again, it goes with, and this we have discussed entire chapter in our book, the 5 Gs of 5. The first G itself is called Genesis, your origin. What are your values? How do you, entrepreneurship is also, the research also says that entrepreneurship is in the DNA. That means usually 40% of entrepreneurs are coming from entrepreneurial background or business background, and that continues. Now we don't know, research is always on the both sides. So it is said that entrepreneurs are born and entrepreneurs are made. So whether they are made or born, it's a debate going on. But the issue here is that I have seen, interacting with all these hundreds of families, and especially all our Indian families, religion plays an extremely important part in our families which percolate down, or say which is stretched to the business also. If we say, all of us, we say, okay, we respect our religion, whatever. We respect it, but we try to keep religion away from the business. But that doesn't happen. Religion is very subtly involved in our business. I'll give you an example. Our religion, like you are Jain and we are Brahmins and all various Hindus we have. Our one basic tenet or the value which all of us carry is to help somebody who is in need. Now, you have organization which is structured and all systems, processes are there, and people who are working, their employees, are getting their benefits and they are getting their salaries or so. But any of your employees suddenly finds some challenge with his health or something goes wrong, then you as a promoter or your managers also will look at it and will say on humanitarian ground, and also a bit of religious ground will come in there to help the person, to extend the help. It's very subtle. We don't want to color or say bring in the colors of religion into it, but the humanity or humanitarianism also is very much a part of our religion. Another thing which I have seen, families and families particularly, many families, they start their business, even the organization, that means the offices or even at home also, with prayers. Now, why do we need this kind of a ritual? Why do we need to have a prayer in the organization or say the company at 9 o'clock in the morning? It's just to create that image. It may be a Muslim who is also reciting the prayer, which is Hindu bhajan or something, or maybe a Christian doing it, or whatever kind of prayers. Now, large corporates abroad in Germany, in USA, they spend, like Bosch and German companies, which I am aware of, they spend half an hour doing yoga practice or say breathing and exercise when they start their day. Many companies, they start with prayers. So religion and our beliefs, I would say our ethos, our values, our beliefs are so much embedded in our day-to-day life, in our thinking, in our behavior, that we must not, if we look at it that no, we are not respecting or say we don't really bring in religion in the business, then it doesn't happen. It is a part of it, and we should take it in a very positive manner, because I always say that the families that play together stay together. The families that pray together stay together. You pray together and you stay together. Right? Now, coming to, you made a very important, nice point, Mitesh. You said most businesses are in the smaller cities, smaller towns rather, not even cities. So in smaller cities, businesses have got, the cultures are different. You're more community oriented, more oriented towards your geographical setting where you belong to, and there the norms of community are very strong. I think yes, one should respect those norms, but at the same time look at the growth, the prosperity of not just the family but the entire community. Like I had heard in one long ago interview of Mr. Rahul Bajaj, and so the interviewer asked him that you are so rich, you are filthy rich, and you have everything in the world that you can ask for. So don't you feel guilty about being so rich? And he said, and I'm talking about maybe 10 years ago, this interview came. So he said, we have about 14,000 or 15,000 families here in our Bajaj, the place where their factory is. And all of these families, they are working in our organization, the company, their children are given best education, they're going to good schools, there are light and all amenities, facilities are there. So God has given me so much strength to help these or make these 14,000 families survive and sustain well. So I think this is what my role is. So what my wealth is irrespective of what the role which I am playing. But feeling guilty is not there. I feel in fact thankful that I am instrumental in creating. And Miteshji, you also would agree with me that your organizations and people and so many families are being fed working in the company. So as owners, we are always thankful, or mostly we are thankful for the role that the universe or the God has given us or put us in to help other families. So that is one point which I think is important. For smaller families, it is also necessary that they stick to their basics. It doesn't have to be do's and don'ts in terms of rituals, but they have to stick to their basic value. And that is where I think we Indians have a strong impact, or say association or family values in our business. So, well, I guess I'm sharing my thoughts, but I do think that religion is important part and for families, and those who respect that religion and behave with respect, they are happy and successful. I won't say, but they are happy.
Okay, sir. Gaurav, your remarks on this, please.
Again, very quick, just to sort of summarize and also trying to build on it. Both of our esteemed guests today, Miteshji and Meeta ma'am, both of you have contributed a lot by pointing out some interesting aspects. I mean, when Dr. Meeta discussed about something like how to keep things within the family, the sudden recall of the term which we call as inbreeding came to my mind, so that I think is also something which family businesses would do very well to avoid, because at the moment we talk of inbreeding, I think we're going to kill the spirit of inquiry, the spirit of experimentation, the spirit of anything and everything which is like thinking out of the box. So that was one. And when Mr. Mitesh was talking of other things, I could relate to what he was saying, and I could recall two other things, and that was creativity, as to promote the culture of creativity in a family business, irrespective of the size of the business, whether it is a small or a mid-size or a large size, the moment we promote that culture of creativity, and we also build a culture, a structured approach to celebrating, if I may use the word, a diversity of opinions, diversity of businesses, diversity of cultures also, you very well pointed out that, it's something like, maybe we use the term, so let me use it, although this is a loaded statement, the big American dream, So many of us actually look at India number 2, I mean, and no offense meant, something which you actually highlighted, as if India number 2, which is like Kanpur, Jaipur, Jodhpur, any of those places, as if there is this big dream for them to chase. But I think the moment we have this dream to chase, irrespective of wherever we hail from, the will to kill would always be there. And that, I think, would, irrespective of where we come from, irrespective of what ethnic, caste, linguistic, religious, minority, majority we come from, that, I think, would provide us with a single-minded goal pursuit kind of a thought. And that, I think, would help all the family businesses, and I repeat, all, irrespective of their size, because size does matter, For example, if we talk of big size and stable kind of family businesses in the COVID times, many have at least, if I would not use the word grown, then at least they have survived.
Yeah.
Now, this survival could have been by virtue of experimentation, by virtue of flexible thought process, and also by virtue of reinventing their product and services mix. So if you're doing something like textiles, do masks. If you're doing something like pharma, if you're doing something like chemicals, do something like sanitizers. So, but then this always may not be an easy getaway. So irrespective of the large or the mid or the small size family businesses, I think the need of the hour right now and also beyond COVID world order would be to be in the constant mode of innovation, to be in the constant mode to promote, celebrate creativity to invite as diverse opinions and team members as possible and empower them. Tanu ma'am,
Okay.
thank you.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you. I think you were kind of bullseye, because then I was going to think about, of course, not big families, but small, mid-sized families where business families where there is a huge resistance to change. Particularly now, of course, people are reacting fast to technology after COVID. But usually there is a resistance to change because they feel that it's a winning formula that they have, and they don't want to change. So I think because we have a time limit now, and we have about 15 minutes left, and I can see a couple of questions on the chat. So I think what I'll do is that I will just pose these questions, and either Mitesh ji and Meeta ma'am, both, you can both will to answer that. So there is a question from our audience by Meghna Dangi. She has asked that due to the recent pandemic, the worst impacted have been mid-sized family businesses. What should family businesses do in such times? And also, what is your message in particular to the mid-sized businesses right now who cannot think of obviously professionalization or professional help? So what's your advice particularly in today's time for mid-sized families, and what should be their way forward?
Okay. I'll take this question, Meghna. Very, very apt question, and I think this is a question which is knowing all most businesses, that if we are mid-sized, that means we have come above, we have crossed the threshold of survival, and now we are there in the sustenance mode. But then what do we do, or how do we continue surviving and growing in this post-pandemic era? One thing which I would say, the first thing is looking at the environment. Keep aside the environment first and look at, sit with your family, or say the entire family needs to sit and take a stock of the situation about the business. What is our business that we are into now, today we are into? How threatening this uncertainty has happened, to what extent it has threatened us for our future survival. Because this pandemic, even if this will go away, something else will come. Now we have entered that scenario or that century where this newer and newer challenges and unforeseen challenges are going to come. And if we go through all these COVID reports or so, research and all, they say that if not COVID, then some another thing is also going to come up. And so many rumors keep on coming. The thing is that these challenges are going to be now common. In our lifestyle, our entire lifestyle, if we see, then this is the first time we have seen this. But maybe, Meghna, you're young, and in your lifestyle, you may see, during your life period, you may see 2 or 3 such events. In next 40 years, 50 years, there could be more such events happening. So, first thing is that the family has to sit together and apply their heads and say that what are we going to do, not how, what are we going to do if such situations happen again? What are the resources we have? Whether we have our human capital or money, our expertise we are together itself, or harmony itself is a big resource in the business. And all that we have it in the business. What do we have? Then look at the environment and see that in this environment, do we need to diversify? Do we need to put our money in another business completely? Or should we start investing in smaller things? Or we don't have money to invest. So we just need to tie our shoes and just go and get more business. Whatever it has stopped, we need to just go and attack the market and get more and more business. Or we may need to change our technology. So what resources do we have with us, and how do we apply it so that in next 5 years, if another such thing happens, then at least we'll be able to survive. So this dialogue, this communication within the family is very important, number one. And number two, cash flows are big challenge, and I'm sure Mitesh ji can add a lot from the business perspective, that how the businesses should survive with the financial or government rules, or what way this business environment can help. But start with the family's clarity, family's purpose of what we want to do. And I also want to add, I know we are short of time, but very quickly, I see the families and put them into again three parts, and I call this family businesses are divided into, or say they are WIL, will family families in business. W is for the family, and Gauraji could be of your interest, or it could interest you. Maybe later we can take this up also. W is the families who are their purpose or their interest, their requirement is to create wealth. It's for themselves first, and then later it could happen. But to become wealthy, become rich, and to become prosperous is the purpose of doing the business. Another set of families are such where innovation is their purpose. Business will do, we may lose some money in a project or new business investment, we do it, but we'll keep on doing and we'll keep on innovating. So that is I, that is innovation. And third, I call it as legacy. There are businesses, and building a legacy business is the business that means you are going to continue for generations to generation. Miteshji's business, I would call it as it's a legacy business. Your grandfather, you, and now your son also would probably continue this legacy. So you are known as not just Pan Parag family. I mean, it is the pride that the business brings in of being into the business that you are into, for the pride for the family. And family's legacy continues in the business. So WIL, wealth creation or wealth generation for ourselves, innovation is either the purpose, or creating the legacy. These are the three purposes of families, if I put it in a way. So, Meghna, you have to decide in which bracket your family comes in.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much. Miteshji, would you like to put some points in this?
It's just like what Meeta ma'am rightly said. In these tough times for small businesses or medium-sized businesses, they have to talk and communicate. If they are doing something wrong, if they think that they're into, not in the wrong business because they've made money, I'm sure earlier, that's why they're in that segment. But now that the times are changing, things are changing, like how businesses want to go to digital wants to go into something else, So they should just analyze and not put all the eggs into one basket. Diversify some of the businesses if they can. If they can't, just in case because of the funds issue, then just concentrate on this business, just lie low. These are the tough times. They will pass. Of course, they will pass. And everyone will get an opportunity, maybe 3 months, 6 months, 1 year down the line. Just let this time go. If cash flow is a crunch, just wait it out. That is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you so much, Miteshji. And there is another question which is very much similar to what you have already answered, that some quick strategies in this era of pandemic for entrepreneurs, I feel pretty much has been said. And I think there's another question which says that in case of just a second, please. So in case of family managed businesses, how should I proceed towards advertisements of products and services, or should I do it because there is a cash crunch? So I think again that also depends on largely the business, but let's see this question as, how do you deal with cash crunch at this time, and should the families resort towards outside? I don't even if there are possibilities. What's your? I think let's not put it as family business. Let's put this as a general question of how do you see cash crunches for businesses, since it's also about entrepreneurship.
This cash crunch is there. It's not only in family businesses, it is there anywhere.
Everywhere, yes.
Anywhere and everywhere. Be it a billionaire or be it, anyone on the street also. So there is no simple formula for it. Only thing is, money saved is money earned. That's what it is.
Oh, wonderful.
So this is what we believe in. If you save any money, that is what you've earned. So in these tough times, just try to save as much as you can. By saving means, there are many avenues. Even if you want to do exercise, those you can't do it. Like you can't go out to eat, you can't go for movies, you can't travel internationally. Recreations are gone. All those money saved, which otherwise you would have spent. So if you are saving that kind of money, and even then there is a cash on, that means there is something seriously wrong with the business that you were in, because what I feel in this lockdown, people have actually not made money, but they've saved quite a bit of money, which otherwise wouldn't be saved.
True.
Right?
Expenditures have gone down.
Expenditures have gone down. So just try to save as much as you can, and just wait for the thing to be over. Things are getting better. Things are opening up. Unlock 1, 2, 3. Things have started up. Offices have started opening. Hopefully, colleges and schools will also open maybe during Diwali time. Things will get back into cycle. It's not the end of the world. The world has faced even worse things when we were very less tech savvy. Many pandemics have come before this also, and eventually they phased on. People have moved on. It is just tough times. Just try to survive it. That's what I'm trying to say, and try to save as much as you can.
I think it's a wonderful message that you've given, that we need to save, cut down on your costs, expenditures, and that is just for this period. And I think if you very rightly said, if you're able to survive on this, that means you're on the right track, and very quickly you will bounce back. Thank you so much. I think we are pretty much done with the question answers, and now I would request my colleague Dr. C.V. Ramana sir to please propose a vote of thanks. And before he does that formally, I would really thank Meeta ma'am and Nitesh sir. Thank you so much for coming on board, and I so much hope that very soon things get normal and we can have you physically on the campus. Meeta ma'am, once again to you, and Nitesh sir, I'm sure Meeta ma'am might vouch for it, but you would have a nice time in our campus.
Yes.
We come from a small city, Surat, but we
Thank
are
you,
a
ma'am.
beautiful campus. But very hopefully that things will be normal, and for a live session we can come invite you. And now
Thank you,
Ramana sir, Ramana sir, over to you, please.
It's my pleasure and honor to declare the vote of thanks. It was a very interesting session. I would just use 3 adjectives. It was insightful, it's very valuable and analytical. We have covered almost various aspects of, say, starting from origin of family businesses till growth of family businesses, functional aspects to cost control. We have covered almost literally each and every aspect. I thank Professor Gaurav Ashish, Session Chair, for his particularly setting the agenda. Then I thank Dr. Meeta Dikshit for your valuable insights, and thank you Nitesh Kothari for your actually practical aspects, which you have clearly told, which are otherwise not available to students or faculty or anybody else. We got really practical wisdom from you. I thank you all, and we look forward for in future for various kinds of collaboration, whether academic or non-academic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you,
so much,
everyone.
sir.
Thank you.
It's a
Thank you
pleasure,
all the
always a
attendees.
pleasure. Yes.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Meeta ma'am.
Thank you,
Bye.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Gaurav sir.
Thank you.
The next